and welcome back to Emerging Excellence. Brett, how are you? It's so good to see you. You've had a little break. Are you well?
I'm well, Felicity, and it's wonderful to be back in 2024 for the new series of conversations. I've been really looking forward to catching up with you.
Amazing, me too. We've had lots of great feedback around our masterclasses, so I'm really excited to be doing those with you again. And today we've got another juicy one. We're going to be talking a bit about making decisions as a leader, because it is about making decisions. You're a leader, you've done all your planning, you've got your strategy, you've done your big announcements, you've communicated to everyone the plan and what's happening, and then you need to change your mind. It's a pretty difficult thing to navigate. It can be a difficult conversation. Where do you even start? Because I know for me, the thing that shows up first is, I want to have integrity. I want to be authentic as a leader, and chopping and changing kind of shows up for me like it's not the right thing to do. How do you approach it?
So I think when we're talking about integrity in leadership, the first thing I think about is integrity is about telling people why you're making the decisions and being honest with them, right? So I don't think that there's ever been a leader who has made a decision at one point based on facts, and then as those facts have changed, has not asked the question, should I change my view or should I change the approach? If there is one of those leaders, I'd love to know who they are, because it means that they're really focused on sticking to the path no matter what. So in the example, I think for me, and I've had to do this a number of times, I've had to change my approach because new information's become available, or quite frankly, because I got the original decision wrong. I think if we talk about integrity in leadership, a good leader will say, if I got the decision wrong, I got the decision wrong and I'm sorry. That's what a great leader does. I've had to do that a number of times. I'm not saying I'm a great leader, just say that the haters out there don't think I'm trying to say I'm a great leader. I'm just giving a practical example. I've had to do that. I'm human, right? Just like everyone else. So for me, Felicity, a leader should change their mind if it's the right thing to do.
What if they change their mind a lot? Like, is it, is it in a year? I don't know, 4 or 5 changes on big strategy. Is that too much? How do you know when to pivot and make that change? And also I feel like things are changing so rapidly today. We hear this a lot, I think, in social media around unprecedented change and all that side of things. So you're getting new information all the time. How do you manage the pace, maybe, be the question.
Well, I think we've spoken before about making sure that people around the table with you are smarter than you are, right? And I really think that's an important thing. I like to make decisions based on feedback that I get from the people around me in the organisations I work in. I like to be challenged on the decisions I make. If I'm unsure, I generally say I don't understand. And so I think that's a really important thing. But the speed of change, look, change is happening everywhere, right? A leader's role is to help navigate that change, help to set the direction of the change and tell, the organisation why the change is occurring. Is there a set number of times that you should change your mind? I don't think so. I would look at it a different way. If you're having to consistently change your approach or your strategy, I would flip back and ask another question, which would be, how did you arrive at strategy in the first place, and did you take enough time to plan it?
And to consider it and think about all the inputs. And as you go down your leadership journey, and I was reflecting on this in a meeting with a client today, once you've had that experience, you can go, okay, change is normal, or getting new information, or making those certain announcements around change becomes normal. Things go wrong. You see that happen. But when you're starting out at the beginning of your career as a leader, that's quite a new experience. And it can, I think, feel quite scary, because it might not be a conversation that you've had before, or you've had to publicly make announcements. Can you recall maybe one of your first experiences and how you navigated that, or what that was like for you?
So I remember I was in a semi-senior role in a national organisation, and I remember in a leadership meeting, I was making an announcement about a restructure. And I put emotion into the conversation. And I remember somebody asked me a question, and I slammed my hands down on the table. And I looked like an absolute fool. And at the time, I was just so angry and wound up that somebody challenged my decision that I actually forgot to think about the fact that I was going to be in the organisation, but there were a number of people sitting around the table that may not have been in the organisation moving forward. So the first thing I did is I actually I went and apologised to everyone sitting around the table. And I think what leaders need to understand is that they're going to make the wrong decisions, they're going to make the right decisions, they're going to need to change their decisions. They can't be automons, whatever the right words are. They can't be robots, right? And I think it doesn't matter whether you're in your first day as a leader or your 100th year, like me. I'm not quite 100, but I'm the one
You're
of my.
a boomer, right, Brett? Didn't we establish
I'm not a boomer. I am not a boomer. But I think the key thing here is you just need to understand that you're a human. You're going to make mistakes. Don't take stuff personally as much as you can, and learn from every decision you make.
Yeah. And I think I'm reflecting on some of my experiences too. You've got the right team around you when you own up to a mistake and you talk about a change, and then they really support you in that. And I think that's a really good sign that you do have those smart people in the room, and then they can understand it. And I feel like often if it's a change, I'll kind of, my first reaction is to be dramatic about it, but often it might just be a change for me. It might not actually be that significant for other people. So I think that's also something to keep in mind, is those flow-on effects. And if I say, oh, it's a change or we're doing something differently, it might just be a tweak to the original plan. And so I know I often have to be conscious myself of that's sort of my automatic reaction, is to dramatize it, when actually how you convey that change is really important as well.
I think that's right. And it's funny, I'm in the process of, with our leadership team here, working through some really big changes in the organisation, which is great. And I think the one thing I learned, and it's literally 2 hours ago, I just had a brutal conversation with somebody. Somebody was extremely honest with me, which was wonderful. The segue is this: change and having people around you at the leadership level is really important, right? But what I think I've forgotten, and this conversation this morning really reinforced this for me, is I need to not forget about the people who are under the leadership team, the operational people in an organisation. And I'll be pretty honest. So the conversation I had with this person, we did a town hall this morning. I thought it went really well. And I check in with this person after every town hall, and I said, tell me how I went. You lost me. You were up and down. You were focused on negatives, and then you focused on positives. I don't truly understand the change, and I don't understand the reason why. And it was a brutal assessment, right? But it was such an important assessment for me, because one of the things that I'm now going to take away is I'll put a monthly one-on-one in with this person, because I respect their view. Second thing is I'm now going to put in together a 6-weekly check-in with just staff from the organisation about how are we going, what do I need to hear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I talk about that in line with this conversation today, Felicity, is sometimes as leaders, we're so busy being leaders of the leadership team that we forgot that we sometimes forget the decisions we make impact staff who are much lower in the organisation from a seniority perspective. And sometimes we forget that we need to listen to them, and sometimes we're either not getting what the change is impacting them or the decisions are impacting because there's blockers or there's just filters. So I just wanted to share that little example of real time about how sometimes you make decisions and then you need to change, but don't just think about the people around you supporting you. Get down to the bottom of the organisation. I say that respectfully from a seniority perspective, and ask them what it really means. Don't rely on others telling you. Ask them.
And one of the surprising things that I've experienced being in one of the more junior roles is that you can be a real champion for the leaders or a real detractor. And there's been certain times where people have thought the CEO should have said something, and CEO was one of my mentors, and they were bitching and complaining about this CEO, and I thought, this person's wonderful. I can't believe the kinds of things that they're saying about this person. And it was over some, they should have announced that they were on board with this, actually it was quite a political thing at the time. That's not the responsibility of the organization, and all of this stuff. And it was so interesting. That was kind of the sentiment. And I think when you are junior in an organization, there's a lot of value that you can add for a CEO and for a senior leader that I started to realize I built relationships and partnerships with more executive type people. And one of those things was you've got time, you've got energy often as a more junior person, and you've got capacity and you've got fresh perspective of ideas. And often if you are in that executive role, you might not have the time, say, to engage the early career people in an organization, but as a junior person, you do. They're your peers, you're directly connected with them. So often I think people miss the value that they can add to an executive. And I love that you've gone and spoken to someone about that. And also that the environment there, they've got the courage to say something as well.
Yeah, I think two things I'd say in response to that, and this is the conversation about integrity in our decision making, right? I've forgotten to go and talk to some junior people. So, I need to demonstrate that I'm still growing as a leader literally every single day. And I think that the reason I talk about that as an example, real-time example for me, is as leaders, we've got to continually check in on how well are we going. We might think we're doing well. The people around us at the leadership level might think we're doing well, but are we really doing well to the staff who are doing all the hard work? What I heard today was not doing that well for this individual staff member. And one staff member is an important person, right? And so I just think in this conversation, I just wanted to share that, Felicity, because sometimes we forget that we're leading, not an organization, we're leading people.
Absolutely. And what happens so I'm just thinking about that. We've gone through a lot of different parts of this conversation, which kind of comes to feedback. And I remember I applied for a board role and I didn't get the opportunity. But the feedback I got about the role was so powerful. They said, we're looking for someone with experience ABC and your experience is XYZ. And I went, oh, that's so helpful to get that specific feedback because I agree with you. I'm not the right person for that role and I'm not ever going to go get that experience. So perfect, you've chosen the right person. Sometimes it can be tricky, I think, for people who are in different parts of the organization to understand that bigger picture context if you don't have that. And how do you navigate that if you've made a decision and you've changed your mind, the integrity piece of it, and then because you don't want to go convince people, but sometimes there's a bit of context missing. How do you navigate that piece of it?
Oh, I think all you can do is you can tell people the reason why, you've made a decision. And I think I like to look at it in colours, right? So there's a cohort of people that are going to be red, they're detractors in an organisation. I try not to focus on those people at all. They're not on board, they're never going to get on board. That's okay. They're doing a good job. I don't need to convince them. They won't listen anyway. Then you've got the green, the people who are on board, who get the reason, who are just doing everything they can to support. Stick close to them, use them as your allies, use them as the people to help get the messaging out, to be the people that are going to tell you the truth and all that type of stuff about what you need to do better and how you can make sure that the decisions you're making are right. But the key people, in my view, to the question about the context are the yellow. They're the ones who you could lose to either the green or the red, right? What I do is I spend time with those people asking them questions. What do you think the change means? Or what do you think the decision means? Or what is it that you haven't got from a context perspective? And I think what I then do is I take that away and I say, right, how do we then take that and then put that back into the narrative, back for the decision making moving forward? But I think at the same time, sometimes people just aren't going to get the context, Felicity, and that's okay. Sometimes as the leader, you just got to say, you can't please everyone. This is the right decision for the organisation. Be honest and transparent if you've got it wrong. Put your hand up and say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong, and then just continue on.
That certainly helped me as a bit of a mantra for leading businesses has been what's the best thing for the organisation? Because often there's things that I personally wouldn't choose that exact answer. But that's what needs to be done. And I think often that can be really challenging, particularly if you've got multiple stakeholders or you're working across a range of organizations to make projects happen. And you have to go with, well, this is the view of the organization. That's who I'm representing at the time. And that's the right thing to do, which sometimes I just go, oh, I don't want to, but.
And I think, from an integrity and decision-making and integrity and leadership perspective, one of the mantras that we've got in our organisation, and one of our very senior leaders here, lives and breathes this mantra every day, and I think it's a McKinsey quote. So I don't want to trademark anyone, but I think it's McKinsey, and if it's not, I apologise. It's always take the hard right over the easy wrong. And I think from an integrity perspective, in leadership, if you're thinking like that, then I think it's better to be able to say to people, well, the easy thing to do would be to stay the course with the original decision. But the context has changed, the data has changed, the environment has changed, or whatever it might be has changed. The easy thing to do, which is the wrong decision, is to stay onto that track, right? But the right decision, which is the hard decision, is to change tack, change the decision, and say to people, this is the reason why.
Yeah, I love, there's a similar quote that I really love, which is hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life.
Yeah.
And that's been a bit of a mantra for me as well, because a lot of the times as a leader, you've got to make hard choices and you go, oh yeah, I feel like I'm like a teenager and stamping my face. I don't want to do that. But you know that in the long run, it's going to be the right choice, and it will hopefully pay off or not. And the more experience you get as a leader, you get to see those results.
And you know what? Every leader makes mistakes. I still make mistakes. And we shouldn't be ashamed of making mistakes as leaders, right? As I said before, we're all human. We can't be robots. So I think, the hard right over the easy wrong, the decisions we make today may impact those in the future. There's some of the things that in our organisation we keep focused on every single day. Doesn't mean that all the decisions are going to be right. But from an integrity perspective, it actually helps us say, well, this is the rationale as to why we've made this decision.
Yeah, I think that is, sums it up really well. That is integrity, is looking from those perspectives, being open about communicating and being open-minded to changing as well. Certainly not an easy job being a leader, Brett. You make it look easy, and there's so many challenges that you need to face. And I think a lot of the time it is a practice thing, and I'm always learning as well. So thanks for being a great teacher, Brett, and providing so much in this conversation of maintaining integrity when you're a leader and when things change.
Thanks, Felicity. Always love having a chat.